Hi guys, welcome back to Ferris Tutorials and to another episode of the Study Guide. In today's episode, we'll be looking at all the question tools from the years 2017 to 2019 Food, Nutrition and Health CSEC exam. Stay tuned. CSEC past paper questions for food, nutrition, and health. And remember, we're looking at all the question tools, rolling it back from 2019 to 2018 and right back at 2017. Now, guys, let us kick things off with the year 2019. Now, let us look at the question. So, question 2, state two functions of food. 2 marks. B section of the question, Samantha is 50 pounds overweight. In an attempt to lose 50 pounds, she reduces her intake of carbohydrates. Your task is to discuss 2 effects of the inadequate consumption of carbohydrates on Samantha's health, right? And that's a 6 marks question. C, minerals, though required in small amounts, are essential for the functioning of the body. Explain 2 ways in which calcium is important to each of the following groups: adolescent females and babies. 4 marks. And finally, state 2 functions of water in the body and 2 sources of water in the diet. And that value 4 marks. All right, let us look at some ideal responses. Okay, so the first one, state 2 functions of food, and that value is 2 marks. So food satisfy hunger, that is 1 mark. Food is needed for proper growth and development. Also, food provides the body with energy. Food aids in the building, repairing, and maintenance of the body's cell. And finally, food prevents and fight infections. And there are many more other functions as it relates to the function of food, right? But you're just required to have 2, and I have 3 there for a bonus, just in case you want to pick and choose. All right, good. Now, when we're thinking about the function of food, remember that we can also think about the functions of the nutrients, right? So if we had food helps to build and repair body tissues, that's the function of protein. Foods help to keep our bones and our teeth strong and healthy. That is also what? Functions of vitamin D, calcium, and phosphorus, right? So we can think about the nutrients when we're answering these questions, because that nutrients are the chemical substances that we get from the food, and those are their functions. Good. Okay, now let us look at the second question. The question is not on the top this time, it's on your right hand side, right? Now, Samantha is 50 pounds overweight. In an attempt to lose 50 pounds, she reduces her intake of carbohydrates. Now, your task is to discuss 2 effects of inadequate consumption of carbohydrates on Samantha's health. Now, guys, let me give you a tip. So these questions, you have to read them correctly. Now, as you see, discuss the effects of, remember we spoke about improper intake of the carbohydrates, protein, and fats, that tutorial. If you missed it, you can go ahead and watch it. Now, that focus on the improper intake, meaning that it focus on conditions that if you have too little carbohydrate, what can happen? Or if you have too much of those nutrients, what can happen, right? But guess what? This particular question asks you for the inadequate amount. So we have to look out for the key terms when we are answering the questions. So the inadequate amount would mean that a lack of, she's not having as much carbohydrate in her diet. So what can happen to her? All right. Now I selected, so you're supposed to discuss 2 effects. I selected 3 effects for you, and then we're going to go through like ideal pointers that we should have under these points, right? So the first one we have is constipation, diverticulus, and also diverticulitis, sorry, and also low energy. All right, now we're going to kick things off with constipation. So we can start off by saying, because remember we're discussing, so it's 3 marks per response, right? So let us see if we can get the 3 marks here. All right, so we're looking at constipation. So identifying that alone should give us 1 mark. So now let us work for 2 more marks. All right. Now, being constipated means your bowel movements are tough or happen less often than normal. Symptoms include trouble having a bowel movement, or you're straining to go, hard or small stool, as well as swollen belly or belly pain. If Samantha limits her carbohydrate intake, she will reduce fibrous foods in her diet. And when we speak about fibrous food, we may say roughage. So we speaking about those cellulose that we can't digest it. So can't digest, so we have to pass them out as feces, right? So those plants, those fruits, vegetables, and starchy vegetables as well, right? Now, these fibers that are mainly carbohydrate, what they does is to regulate bowel movements. Therefore, if we're not having any carbs in our diet, right? If we're not having any oatmeal, any wheat products, any fruits or vegetable, then guess what? Our bowel movement can't be regulated, and guess what? Samantha will be constipated. Now, the main role of fiber in her diet is to keep the digestive system healthy by flushing out the waste. And if she's not consuming carbohydrate in the form, mostly we're speaking now of the roughage aspect of it, then she can be constipated. All right. Now, the next effect that you could look at is diverticulitis. Now, diverticulosis happens when pouches, which we call them diverticula, form in the wall of the colon. If these pouches get inflamed or infected, as you can see in the picture above, it is called a condition called diverticulitis, right? Which can be very painful. Now, how does this happen? This occurs, so it's like a lead up of being constipated, so not having enough roughage, right? So this can occur when feces are partially digested. Food blocks the opening of the diverticula. So let's go again. Diverticulitis occurs when feces or partially digested food blocks the opening of the diverticula. A diet with inadequate fiber leaves Samantha at risk for diverticulitis. So not having those roughage again, having a buildup in the colon can develop the condition. So when she's straining to go, she can also create more pouches. If those pouches become inflamed, if those diverticula becomes inflamed, then it's a condition called diverticulitis that is very painful. All right. Now let us look at the last effect. So we're speaking of low energy, because if we're not having as much of the primary energy giver, so remember that carbohydrates provide our body with energy, then we'll have a low energy. So a person experiencing low energy may feel tired all the time and may be unable to complete basic tasks without feeling worn out or exhausted. Other symptoms associated with low energy or fatigue include feeling sleepy during the day, brain fog, or difficulty concentrating, lack of motivation. Now, all of these things will start happening, if not all, most of these things Samantha may experience because she's not having adequate amount of carbohydrate in her diet. Now, Samantha will be prone to experience these symptoms, as I said before, as the main function of carbohydrate is to provide the body with energy, right? So we're working for 3 marks per discussion. And remember, we looked at 3 different effects that you can choose, right? So constipation, diverticulitis, or low energy. So you choose the one that you're comfortable with. A question may ask you about the inadequate intake of protein, or the inadequate intake of or too much of protein or too much of carbohydrates. What can happen, right? What are the health conditions that may happen to the person? Good. Now let's look at our next question, and it reads, minerals, though required in small amounts, are essential for the functioning of the body. Explain 2 ways in which calcium is important to each of the following groups. So we have here adolescent females and also babies. Now right off the back you may be thinking, calcium provides help the bones and teeth to become strong and healthy, right? But guess what? We have to think of the special group that they list in the question. So for instance, they list adolescent females. So you think to yourself, what is unique about the adolescent female? Yes, they will need the calcium like everyone else for strong bones and healthy teeth. But what it is, what are they going through, right? Now let us look at the ideal responses. Good. Now, up to 90% of bone mass development happens in childhood and teenage years, right? So right off the bat, so for the development of the bone mass of the skeleton to develop properly, they have to have calcium within their diet, both the adolescent females and the babies. Now let us tune up the answers more a little as it relates to what the question is actually asking. So we're speaking about the adolescent female, right? So calcium aids in blood clotting. Calcium aids in blood clotting, right? Also called coagulation. Now, why would we want to link blood clotting and the female, the adolescent female, right? So during the adolescent years, that is the onset of menstruation, where monthly, or depending on certain situation, persons may have hormone issues where they may even have menstruate for more than 1 time per month, right? But we're looking at the function as it relates to blood clotting for this particular group, right? Now calcium aids in blood clotting, right? Same thing as coagulation, right? Now this is an important process that prevents excessive bleeding. So likewise for the female adolescent, during the onset of menstruation, having the correct amount or adequate amount of calcium within their diet then helps the blood to clot, and this will prevent excess bleeding, right? Now when a blood vessel is injured, calcium also aid in the clotting of blood to do what? To prevent the blood from escaping. So what it does is to form a thick jelly-like texture to prevent the persons from bleeding out. Likewise, during menstruation, it forms a jelly-like texture of a menstrual cloth. All right, guys. Now let us look at babies. Calcium is important in babies to prevent the deficiency disease called rickets, right? Now, calcium helps to make the strongest bones possible that protects them against bone loss later on in life, right? It also aids in the formation of strong feet. Now, babies are developing, so their bones are soft at birth, and so to prevent them from having rickets, they need to have adequate amount of calcium in their diet. so that they can prevent that deficiency diseases. Also, the onset of growing new teeth, right? They will also need this important mineral as well. Now, let's go on to our next question. State two functions of water in the body and two sources of water in the diet, right? So that question is 4 marks. So 2 marks for two functions and 2 marks for two sources, right? So for example, for the sources you may have fruits, vegetables, soups, cold or hot beverages, or yes, the regular drinking water as well, right? So those are all sources. So liquid foods provide us. So the soups, the hot and cold beverages, the drinking water, as I said before, and of course, fruits and vegetables are plentiful in water, and thus you can choose any of those for this particular question. All right. Now, as it relates to the function, we have quite a few here. So water helps to carry nutrients and oxygen to your cells. That's one. It moistens oxygen for breathing. It helps convert food to energy. Water protects and cushions your vital organs. Water makes up to 75% of your muscles. Water regulates your body temperature. And also, it helps to cushion your joints, among many more functions, right? So you just need to choose 2 of those functions, and you can choose the ones that you're most comfortable with, or the ones that you think you're more easier to remember. All right. Now let's move on. That was it for 2019. Now let us take a look at what 2018 number 2 question looked like. All right. So define the term deficiency disease, 2 marks. Name the deficiency disease that occurs as a result of insufficient vitamin C in the diet. List 3 signs or symptoms of the deficiency disease named above. Your class has been asked to conduct a water awareness campaign. As part of this campaign, explain 3 reasons why water is important in the diet. See, we have another water question repeating, right? And finally, describe the digestive process of a piece of meat from the time it enters the mouth until it reaches the stomach. 4 marks. All right, guys, let's get started. Define the term deficiency disease. Now, a deficiency disease refers to any illness that is caused by a lack of specific nutrients, especially a vitamin or mineral, possibly stemming from insufficient intake, digestion, absorption, or utilization of the nutrient, right? So deficiency disease, the word deficiency means lack of, right? So it's an illness that is caused by a lack of specific nutrients. No, more than likely, especially those that are vitamins, certain vitamins, and also minerals. Those are mostly the popular deficiency diseases that persons may experience. All right. Now, even if that person is consuming that particular nutrient, guess what? Things that may still lead to them being deficient are the intake of that particular nutrient is insufficient, or their bodies are not digesting that particular nutrient because they may be taking certain substances that are found in certain foods or certain enzymes that block the particular nutrient. So it's very important for us to understand the science of which foods work together, which particular nutrient help to absorb another particular nutrient to prevent deficiency diseases. Also, there may be just a problem with absorbing that particular nutrient, right? So absorption of the nutrient may also be affected, as well as the body is unable to utilize that particular nutrient. So there's a lot of factor that comes into play when we speak of deficiency diseases, right? The nutrient is lacking that cause a particular illness, key terms to take away, and also a deficiency disease may be influenced by insufficient intake of that nutrient, the body's inability to absorb and digest and utilize. All right, now let's take a look at the next question. Name the deficiency disease that occurs as a result of insufficient vitamin C in the diet. Now, list 3 signs or symptoms of the deficiency disease named, right? So this question says, let's state the first part. You're to name the deficiency disease that occurs as a result of insufficient vitamin C, and the answer there is scurvy. Now, the signs and symptoms may include lethargic or fatigue, lethargic and fatigue. So feeling lazy, have a feeling of tiredness, right? Persons will have bleeding gums, may also suffer from anemia. You notice that is stage 3 of scurvy. So because their gums are bleeding, blood is not clotting, so they're lacking the calcium too and the vitamin K in their bodies, right? So, and also they may experience a high fever, right? So the signs and symptoms we can list. Remember, the signs are the things that you would see and the symptoms are the things that you would feel. But this question says sign or symptoms, so we can mix the two together, right? So it asks for 3, I gave you 4, so you can choose which one is best for you. All right, now next question. Your class has been asked to conduct a water awareness campaign. As part of this campaign, explain 3 reasons why water is important in the diet. Now, previously we looked at the function of water in the previous exam. I think it was 2019 exam that asks about the functions of water. Now, this particular question is asking you, why is water important in the diet, right? So both responses are very much similar, but guess what? For this one, you're asked to explain rather than just state or list. So we have to put a little, flesh it out a bit and write some things about our points, all right? Now let us look at the ones that I have. So water regulates body temperature. When heat activates sweat glands, these glands bring that water. Now, along with the body's salt to the surface of the skin as sweat. Once on the surface, the water evaporates. Water evaporating from the skin cools the body down, ain't it? Keeping its temperature in a healthy range. So the first point there, first importance, water regulates the body temperature, and how this happens is by when you sweat, right? The water helps to cool our body down. Next point, water moistens tissues in the eyes, nose, and mouth. Also, it lubricates joints. Now, water moistens body tissues such as our eyes, nose, and mouth. Can you imagine if we didn't have any moisture in our eyes, our nose, or our mouth? Think about it. When we're even eating and we're supposed to produce saliva to help digest that food, our nose, right? Can you imagine? Our eyes would probably burn without that moisture, right? Or hurt. So water is the main part of every body fluid, such as saliva and blood. It helps prevent constipation and cushions our joints and protects our organs. Good. Next importance, water lessens the burden on vital organs such as our kidneys and liver. Now, what water does is to flush out the waste products as it dilutes the calcium in our urine, which could crystallize to form kidney stones. If the body did not receive enough fluids, Drinking water keeps the body hydrated by replenishing the body's fluids lost through urination or during sweating when it's regulating our body temperature, right? So we have explained three importance there. We explained how water regulates our body temperature, how it moistens the tissues in our eyes, our nose and mouth, and lubricates our joints. Why is it important? And also how it lessens the burden on our vital organs such as our kidneys and liver, right? Now I'm going to give you some additional option that you may want to explore as it relates to the importance of water, but you know that you'd have to explain some more on these, right? So other options include, or importance include, it helps dissolve minerals and nutrients to make them accessible to your bodies, right? It protects body organs and tissues. It carries nutrients and oxygen to cell. And lastly, we discussed this one previously. We explained this one, that it lessens the burden on the kidneys and the liver by flushing waste products. All right. Now, next question. Describe the digestive process of a piece of meat from the time it enters the mouth until it reaches the stomach, right? So let us take this one. We have 4 points here, and this question value 4 marks as well. So we have 4 pointers. Good. Now, please note that it asks for the digestion from it enters our mouth until our stomach. So it's not the complete process, right? So 1, digestion starts in the mouth from chewing. So we speak of mastication, right? So by chewing the meat, which is also considered as physical digestion. So chewing the meat, using our tongue to position the food so it can be broken down by the teeth into small pieces, right? And secreting digestive juices or saliva that begins to loosen the meat contents before you swallow it. Now, the enzyme in the saliva, which is salivary amylase, it doesn't act upon the protein. But if we were having a piece of bread, if we were having starch, potato, or pasta, then the breakdown of carbohydrate would have started in the mouth, right? But remember, we're doing a piece of meat, and that we're looking at the protein, right? So let's recap. Number 1, so digestion starts in the mouth from chewing the meat, which is physical digestion, and secreting digestive juices, which is our saliva, that begins to loosen the meat content before you swallow. 2, the bolus is then swallowed. The bolus, that should have been the bolus, is then swallowed. So remember, the bolus now is that mushy. So when we chew that ball that we're going to swallow, that is called the bolus, right? So the bolus is then swallowed and moves down the alimentary tract by an involuntary movement called peristalsis. So we may say esophagus or esophagus. So the bolus moves down by the movement of peristalsis. All right. 3, the bolus is swallowed and ends up where? In the stomach, right? Which is a very acidic environment that helps to further loosen the food, and also to specific enzymes are produced to break down the particular meat, right? So the stomach will physically churn the food that is there to mix it with the enzymes and the stomach acid, right? Now, the meat requires more acid and leads the body to release specific enzyme, and it is very important now for us to mention this enzyme so we can get our full marks. So the enzyme that is used to break down the protein to digest it is called pepsin, right? So it breaks it down further to what our body can use, such as amino acids and the different vitamins and minerals that may, even though are minor nutrients from the piece of meat, but that can be useful for our bodies, right? No, that is it as it relates to the piece of meat from the digestion, starting from the mouth and then finishing off in our stomach. All right. Now let us look at the questions for 2017. Number 1. List 3 functions of calcium in the diet. Next, identify 3 non-heme sources of iron in the diet. Suggest 1 reason why sources of iron are especially important in the diet of strict vegetarians. 2 marks. Describe in detail how a person may become obese from an excessive intake of proteins. And finally, explain 2 guidelines of conserving vitamin C during the pre-preparation of food. Alright guys, now let us look at the first question. So you're required to list 3 functions of calcium in the diet, and previously you noticed that calcium was also in the 2018 exam, right? Now let us look at some functions, right? It asks for 3, but I give you 2 more as bonus. Now, calcium is needed in the diet to maintain strong bones and feet, where it supports their structure and hardness. Next, the body needs calcium for muscles to move and for nerves to carry messages between the brain and every body part. Next function, a proper level of calcium in the body over a lifetime can help prevent osteoporosis in the elderly, right? And likewise, when children are growing up, they need adequate amount of calcium to also prevent rickets, right? Calcium also helps in muscle contraction, right? Calcium helps regulate muscle contraction. When a nerve stimulates a muscle, the body releases calcium. The calcium helps the protein in muscle carry out the work of contraction. Good. And it also aids in blood clotting. So there you have about 5 functions of calcium, and you can choose the ones that you are most comfortable with. All right. Now the next question, identify 3 non-heme sources of iron in the diet. Now, what are non-heme sources of iron? You know, we have 2 categories of iron as it relates to their sources. So we have heme and non-heme, right? Now, non-heme iron are found in plant products. And I know you can guess it if you didn't know that heme iron are found in animal products, right? But this question asks for you to identify 3 non-heme sources of iron in the diet, and they are, you can choose beans, nuts and seeds, dried fruits such as raisins, green leafy vegetables, and also fortified breads and cereals. Good. So anything that is fortified with iron are also cereals are good sources of non-heme iron, right? Next question. So just 1 reason why sources of iron are especially important in the diet of a strict vegetarian. So strict vegetarian guys are vegans. These persons don't eat any, they exclude all animal products, right? They only eat plant-based products, right? So we're not talking about lacto-ovo vegetarians, we're not talking about ovo vegetarians, we're not talking about pescatarian, we're talking about the strict vegetarians, right? Also called vegans. So no farm, all animal products are excluded from their diet. Good. Now let us look why sources of iron are important to them. Good. Now the sources of iron are very important to vegans, or we may say strict vegetarians, because they exclude animal food sources which has the heme iron sources. Good. Now the heme iron sources, guys, are those iron sources that are easily absorbed into our bloodstream, right? Now special attention should be given to make sure they are getting enough iron to prevent deficiency diseases such as iron deficiency anemia, right? So that's 2 marks there right away. But if you want to expound a little bit more, we can look at another side. They need to understand the scientific principles that governs the sources of iron and also the substances that increases or inhibits iron absorption. So because they're strict vegetarians and their iron source comes from non-heme sources, which are plant-based iron sources such as grains, vegetables, fortified cereals, it is very important for them to understand other substances that may be found in food like oxalate, phytate, all of those substances that prevents the iron from absorbing, right? So they need to understand that vitamin C, so having the baked beans or the broad beans or the nut loaf with items rich in vitamin C such as citrus juices, strawberries, guava, cherries, all of those will help for the iron to be absorbed, right? Now, there are 2 types of iron sources, as we said before: heme, which is found in animal foods, and non-heme, which is found in plant foods. Now, it is true that heme iron, the kind from the animals, is better absorbed than non-heme sources. So you may find out that these vegetarians may also have to take iron supplements if they're lacking, right, as they're prone to develop iron deficiency anemia. So they have to understand the sources to know that, okay, because I'm having a plant-based iron source, it's not as much iron that I'm getting as if I was having it from the animal source. Therefore, I need to maximize the absorption by having a iron rich food with some vitamin C so it can complement it so that it may be absorbed readily into their bloodstream. All right. Now, vegetarians and vegans may have lower iron stores than non-vegetarians. Good. Therefore, they have to be knowledgeable about the best plant sources of iron, which includes legumes, grains, nuts, seeds, green leafy vegetables, and dried fruits such as raisins and prunes. Now the next question. Describe in detail how a person may become obese from an excessive intake of protein, right? Excess protein consumed is usually stored as fat. While the surplus of amino acid is excreted, some will still remain in the body and turned into glucose via a process called glyconeogenesis. Now, this can lead to weight gain over time, especially if you consume too many calories while trying to increase your protein intake. Now, protein, guys, they contain fats. More so than nuts, they contain hidden fats, and even more the animal sources, right, which have saturated fats, right, and an excessive intake. So all that nice marble ribeye steak, that nice marbling technique that gives it its flavor, if we consume too much protein, then yes, certainly it can lead to weight gain. And finally, our last question. Explain 2 guidelines of conserving vitamin C during the pre-preparation of food, right? So how is it? What are some of the ways in which we can prevent the vitamin C from leaching, right? So 1, Do not peel fruits too much in advance as air destroys vitamin C. Now guys, air or oxygen contributes to the deterioration or the spoiling of foods, right? Especially one of those is vitamin C. Good. Now, next point, do not soak vegetables in water. That's a no-no, because guess what? The water-soluble vitamins will soak away in that water, right? Next, wash fruits and vegetables before cutting. So we don't cut and peel and then we go wash. No, no, no. We'll lose our nutrients, right? What we do is to wash, and then if we have to peel, then we peel. But in some cases, you know that certain foods can be had with the skin, so we don't need to take it off, right? Because the nutrients lie closely to the skin. All right, we could also add to that, do not peel deeply if we have to peel. All right, and the final one is avoid using utensils that are made from copper, as copper destroys vitamin. You are awesome. You've made it to the end of the session. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and most importantly, share with persons who you know will find this information useful. Thank you for making it Ferris Tutorials.